We are what our thoughts are made us. Actions and feelings come secondary. Thoughts live, they travel far. So take care of the thoughts you're thinking. These were the words by the great, revered saint of modern India. These were the words of the legendary Swami Vivekananda. From the beginning of this, with this video as the first video in the series, we are going to begin a series of videos which are going to be focused on the power of thoughts. We are going to be using a phenomenal book, a book which is called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, as a reference and as a book which will sort of guide us towards the different dimensions of thoughts. Now, As a Man Thinketh is one of those books which probably is the tiniest books which you will probably look at if you are someone who is accustomed to the habit of reading in the self-help community. But this book is so powerful and so profound. The thing which I found very fascinating about this book is that it talks about different dimensions of human life, which sort of has a very logical sequence of cause and effect relationships. And he puts it very logically and extremely in a very simple and pragmatic way, which anyone can understand if one learns to read this book. Now, coming to the focus of this particular video, as we are going to look at this 7th video series, every video's focus is going to be on one of the chapters of this book. And beginning with that, the first chapter of this book talks about thought and character. Now, probably you might be aware of the fact that thoughts create our beliefs and beliefs drive our actions and actions ultimately forge us into our character. But what is something which needs to be given close attention to is the mechanics of thoughts. Because most of us don't understand the power and the importance of having the right thought process, of having the right thinking. But this book serves as a guide to understand what are the mechanics of thoughts, right? So let us go deep into this book and try to understand what are the different aspects the author is talking about. The first chapter is thought and character. Now he says something very beautiful. He says man is a growth by law and not a creation of artifice. Now one thing you will notice that this book is, the English used in this book is a little old, in the sense that it was published in the early 1900s, and because of that the English might be, the words in this book might be a little different as compared to the conventional English which we are used to in this generation. But artifice is something which can be thought of as an accident, which does not have a logical cause and effect sequence, at least from a very superficial standpoint. He says that man is a growth by law and not a creation of artifice, and cause and effect is as absolute and undeviating in the hidden realm of thought. As in the world of visible and material things, a noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or choice, but is the natural result of continued effort and right thinking. The effort of long cherished association with godlike thoughts is the result of a godlike personality. An ignoble and bestial character by the same process is the result of continued harboring of groveling thoughts. Now, groveling thoughts simply means thoughts which are of negative temperament or which are of negative quality. Now, we all know, we all understand that thoughts create our reality, right? Thoughts are the seeds which sort of decide what the fruits of our destiny are. We all know this. This is common sense, right? But as I always keep saying, common sense is not so common these days. But what we fail to understand is that how the mechanics of these thoughts are consciously or unconsciously forging our destiny. Everybody talks about thinking positive, everybody talks about not thinking negative. But why are we telling to think positive and think negative? And what are the different manifestations? What are the different effects in our current reality? And what are the subtle causes which we often tend to ignore? This book is a complete dive deep in that direction, right? And he says something beautiful. He says, you are the master of your fate. Yes, you heard that right. He says, you are the master of your fate. Most of us think that we have come with a certain set of luck and bandwidth of luck. Even if you are someone who prescribes to the concepts of astrology, would also look and acknowledge that astrology is also based on the premise of law of karma, right? It is said that every soul reincarnates to different costumes in the sense your body, and that karmic bandwidth, that karmic potential is probably creating certain situations in our life. But it's not so superficial, right? It's not that life is unfair for few because of their karma. We'll go deep into that in some time, but let us look at what James is talking about here. He says, man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapon by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, man ascends to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, he descends below the level of beast. Now he is talking about two extreme polarities here, the white and the black, but most of us are sort of between, right? We are in the shades of grey. Recently, I noticed a very insightful Instagram post wherein they talked about the different ways, the progression of good and evil to the various areas of Satyug, Dwapar Yug and Kal Yug. And funnily enough, the image portrayed the same person harboring both good and evil personalities. This is how all of us function, right? We all have something which is good, but there are also the evil parts of us. There is a Ram and Ravan within each of us. What comes out of us depends on the seeds, or depends on which personality were you watering, either consciously or unconsciously, right? So he says that we have the right tools at our disposal. If we use the tools rightly, we either ascend to divine qualities, we either ascend to lofty divine nature, or we can sort of go to the level of a beast, right, by harboring the negative thoughts and feelings. Now this is very interesting and practical, right? And you don't need to have a very spiritual set of framework of mind to understand this. Just do a simple experiment. Just close your eyes and think that the whole world needs to get destroyed, or think that the whole world needs to suffer. Just the thought of that will create a chain of reactions in your body, and you'll feel a certain sense of unease. And exactly opposite of that, just close your eyes and just think of the fact, I probably bless everyone, that let every person in this planet feel good, feel happy, feel joyous, feel serene, feel tranquil, feel genuinely happy. And suddenly a gush of happiness flows into you. What happened, right? So essentially this gave you the immediate effect of how thoughts function, right? And it is not a hearsay, not a philosophy, when our rishis and the ancient spiritual mystics kept emphasizing the power of right thinking and the right thoughts. Now coming to the second aspect of what he says, of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul which have been restored and brought to light in this age, none is more gladdening or fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that man is a master of thought, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment and destiny. As a being of power, intelligence and love, and the lord of his own thoughts, man holds the key to every situation and contains within himself that transforming and regenerative agency by which he may make himself what he wills. Man is always the master, even in the weaker and most abandoned state. Now here comes a very important thing to observe and ponder upon. He says man is also the master even when he feels that he is a victim, right? He says, but in his weakness and degradation, he is the foolish master who misgoverns his household. When he begins to reflect upon his condition and to search diligently for the law upon which his being is established, he then becomes the wise master, directing his energies with intelligence and fashioning his thoughts to fruitful issues. Such is the conscious master, and man can only thus become by discovering within himself the laws of thought, which discovery is totally a matter of application, self-analysis and experience. So what here the author is trying to point us towards is when we at times feel victim of our circumstances, right? Even at that standpoint, we are the person who are playing victim. Because let's remember, a situation is just a situation. The kind of story we want to create, the kind of meaning we want to associate with that situation is what creates our response. So to give you a very practical example, right? Let's say there are 5 different people in which sort of encounter the same situation. Now for that situation to be universally good or bad, the reactions of all those 5 people needs to be the same. If the reaction is different, then probably that particular situation lies in the gray zone, and it depends on the perception of the person who is responding to the situation to either help him or to make him feel like a victim. So essentially the author is saying, even when you feel that you are a victim, but you are a master, but the only difference is you have misused your own powers and made yourself feel like a victim. And he says something that only by such searching and mining are gold and diamonds obtained. Now even if you observe nature, you will notice that only when you go through excruciating levels of excavation that you are able to look at the most precious treasures, right? Whether they are precious gemstones or whether they are gold and diamonds. But we don't have the patience to go deep within ourselves and introspect as to what could be the cause and effect tendencies which are happening in our own life. So the author says that once we start mining within our own self, all the answers which we were seeking outside are within. It is beautifully said in all the spiritual literature and disciplines that enlightenment is not something which we aim for. Enlightenment is essentially remembering the lost self. We have forgotten who we truly are. So enlightenment is not about attaining something. Enlightenment is only removing the layers of conditioning which we have acquired over a period of time and essentially remembering the true sense of consciousness. Right? Now he says that man can find every truth connected with his being if he will dig deep into the mine of the soul, and that he is the maker of his character, the moulder of his life, and the builder of his destiny. He may unerringly prove if he will watch, control, and alter his thoughts, tracing their effects upon himself, upon others, and upon his life and circumstances. Linking cause and effect by patient practice and investigation, and utilizing his every experience, even to the most trivial everyday occurrence, as a means of obtaining that knowledge of himself, which is understanding, wisdom, and power. Now, most of us would have subscribed to the philosophy of destiny, right? And I have read a beautiful definition of destiny by a book called The Mongoose Aldous Ferrari. In that book, it's defined, destiny is defined as the marriage of preparation and opportunity, right? It is beautiful because if you are getting the right opportunities but you aren't prepared enough to capitalize on it, those opportunities are useless. And most of us play victim when we are faced with circumstances and situations, but we fail to acknowledge and realize that every situation has a cause and effect dynamics. But we are not patient enough to investigate, to go into the granular details. We like playing victim. We like to sort of blame the circumstances and shift responsibility to the outside rather than seek within, rather than seek the answers from within. Now, this is not sort of asking you to shun the responsibilities of outside people and outside circumstances. But essentially what I am humbly inviting you to consider is to carefully observe the cause and effect dynamics which are hidden within every circumstance, which are hidden within every catastrophe and within every success. And this was the emphasis of the first chapter of this book. This first chapter wanted us to explore the indomitable power of thoughts, right? Thoughts are extremely powerful, but we fail to acknowledge them and we sort of are very undisciplined when it comes to our thinking process. The more we start disciplining our mind in terms of thinking the right thoughts versus positive thoughts, thinking right is more important than thinking just positive, right? The more our character will be nuanced and refined in the most noble version possible. And if you look at the concept of destiny in general, even if you ascribe to the concept of astrology and law of karma and things, right? Even if you want to understand astrology, because I have been someone who has some kind of understanding of what astrology is, because astrology is a Vedic science, right? Whether you like it or not, it has some scientific premise. Now, the reason why certain astrologers are able to predict certain things about you, and certain things you will often notice that there are certain things which are absolutely right and there are certain things which are absolutely not right. Now, the answer for this, I got this answer from one of a beautiful concept which was discussed by Brahmakumari sister Shivani in the podcast with Ranveer Allahabadia. In that, she said that most of us are born with a document, right? So basically, your astrological chart is the alignment of planets when you were born. That's the document. Now, most of the astrologers unfortunately use astrology as a predictive tool, but it was never meant to be a predictive tool. It was more of a self-assessment tool, the self-assessment of the soul which has just arrived. Essentially, the reason why astrologers are able to predict what are your natural skill sets or passions is because they are able to read the karmic map of the soul. If a certain person is inclined towards singing or dancing, or someone is probably inclined to spirituality, there probably is a karmic signature, a memory signature in that soul, and which is visible in the birth chart, right? And based on that, most of the times what the astrologist says becomes true, because that is his natural tendency. Now, this is also true for the good and the bad predictions. Sure, there are certain aspects of our destiny which is called as the prarabdha karma, which cannot be changed and altered. Karma is a complete different philosophy. We will probably make another video which talks about the philosophical aspects of karma, wherein there are different levels of karma, right? Prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, kriyamana karma. Now, there are different aspects. The focus is not on that, but essentially how thoughts create destiny, right? So, let's say a certain astrologist looks at your chart and says that this person is not going to be very successful, but he probably doesn't give you the reason why he says that. The reason probably is he sees that this person has layers of lethargy in his consciousness as a natural quality, right? And because of that lethargy, he is not going to take the right actions in the right time, and because of which his success is either going to suffer or going to delay, right? Now, if you are sort of aware and armed with this information that this is a quality which I need to change in myself. Now, if you are successful in changing your beliefs and behaviors around that particular consciousness of lethargy, then that prediction which that astrologer gave at that point of time is going to be null and void, right? Because that particular karmic blueprint doesn't say anything about what you are going to do in this particular lifetime. It only talks about a trajectory based on your existing karmic map, your own consciousness, your own habits, formations. But it's up to you. This is where free will comes in. Most of us think free will and destiny are sort of opposite concepts, but no, they are not opposite concepts. They are in fact complementary. It's up to us how we utilize free will so that we can better our destiny, right? But when you understand this concept, you will feel so empowered that the things which people used to say on destiny, right, that you are born with a fixed destiny, all these seem to be null and void. But also remember, I don't subscribe to the school of thought which says everything is free will, everything is free action. No, that's not the case. Life is more grey than black and white. We cannot completely say that everything is free will, or we cannot say everything is destined. It all comes, it's all a game between free will, between the dynamics of free will and destiny. But whenever we understand this power which each of us has, that our thoughts are capable of, if not completely change our destiny, at least alter it, or script it in a way which is more productive and fulfilling to us. So why not utilize this particular piece of information and feel empowered as to how powerful our thoughts can influence our reality. So this was the main focus of behind creating this series. This is going to be the first video of this series of this As a Man Thinker, and we sort of looked at the aspect of the influence of thought on character. The 6 videos which are going to follow this video are going to tackle different dimensions of the effect of thought on health and body, on circumstances, and also as we progress, we'll go into the higher virtues of humanity like serenity, serendipity, tranquility, peace, bliss. My whole focus behind making this video series was to remind you of how powerful our thoughts are and how powerful taking responsibility for your life can serve as a game-changing narrative for you and me. Thank you so much for your time on this video. I'm sincerely grateful for your time on this video, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel if you really enjoyed it. Don't forget to share this content on Thoughts to a couple of your friends so that you empower them as well, and in the process empower yourself as well. Thank you so much, and meet you in the next video. Bye.